In this video, we're gonna be looking at the art of making and breaking habits from a perspective that people are rarely exploring. I will show you exactly how you can build good habits and break bad ones from the view of neuroscience. I was listening to one of Andrew Huberman's podcast episodes the other day and was introduced to a variety of different ways of thinking about motivation, something called limbic friction. Many people think of motivation when the topic of habits come up. Limbic friction, however, is a phrase that's used to describe how much effort, how much activation energy you need to engage in a particular behavior. The more activation energy something takes to start doing, the more limbic friction there is to do it. I like this phrase more than motivation because it's easier to define and quantify. To reduce limbic friction, you have to reduce the activation energy of starting a difficult task. I do this most of my life when I record YouTube videos. This is a task that takes enormous setting up time. I have to get the camera equipment ready, scripts out, and finally get myself in the mindset to record. Because of this, I like to batch record videos when I can. First, I get 3 or 4 videos scripted out and ready for recording. Then I set everything up for recording. I get my camera and teleprompter set out, extra shirts, a stoic vibe, and a nice cup of hot tea if I'm feeling quirky. I take a usually hard task like setting up recording equipment and batch it. This drastically reduces the activation energy to record 4 videos because everything's already ready. I just have to sit down, hit the record button, and I'm good to go. Activation energy isn't just determined by our environment, but also what time of day it is and how we feel in the moment. If we're tired, groggy, and grumpy, we will have a lot more limbic friction to doing a morning workout. How we feel in the moment is primarily determined by the time of day. Neuroscientists have defined 3 phases of the day, each bringing drastically different mental states and propensities for doing things. The first phase is one which lasts from waking up to about 8 hours after. The second phase is phase 2, lasting from about 9 hours. And finally, the third phase is phase 3, which lasts from about 16 to 24 hours. In phase 1, the neuromodulators norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine tend to be elevated. Epinephrine, or adrenaline, is what gives you that insane energy when your heart rate goes up during exercise or when you enter the fight or flight mode. Epinephrine is actually manufactured from dopamine, which is also higher during phase 1 of the day. Dopamine itself is commonly known as the pleasure hormone, but it's more about feeling motivated to do things than getting pleasure out of them. It's what gets you up at 9 p.m. to go to the cupboard and grab that last bit of chocolate. You know you do it. All these hormones together make phase 1 a very action-oriented phase for most people. It turns out that when you're action and focus-oriented, you'll be more likely to overcome any limbic friction that stands in the way of performing various habits. This means that phase 1 is a terrific time to put in habits you know you have a high degree of limbic friction toward. I love doing habits like writing and going to the gym in the first phase of the day because I know it's when I'll be most able to overcome this limbic friction. In phase 2, however, serotonin levels start to rise up with other hormones going down. This causes the second half of the day to lend itself to a more relaxed state of being, which means it's a terrific time to take on habits you have already ingrained or have low limbic friction. Most people I know do all of their relaxing activities at night, watching television, reading a book, playing video games. I like to sit in front of the fire in the living room, drink a nice cup of hot chamomile tea while making progress on a pre-planned set of books. Despite this fact, some people still believe they're not morning people, even when shown the neuroscience of the phases. My brother claims to be a night person, but almost always gets all of his productive work done in the first 2 hours of the day. He looks at me getting up at 6 o'clock and gawks, even though I secretly believe he's a morning person on the inside. Finally, we have phase 3. The only thing you should be doing in this phase is sleeping. Please, for the love of all that is good, sleep. As soon as that clock hits target sleep time, I want to see you falling into that bed like there is no tomorrow. One of the main things that happens during sleep is the brain sorts through relevant memories and keeps what seems important. You're actively hurting your ability to ingrain habits from repetitions done during earlier phases if you don't sleep. The great thing about regularly placing specific habits in the same phase and time of the day is it lets us experience the environmental effect. those neurochemical states from the phases of the day start to get associated with the leaning in and the process of beginning and ending those particular habits. In doing so, they shift the whole nervous system towards being able to predict that certain things will happen at specific times. This primes us to enter whatever mindset or mood we need for that particular habit. When I sit down to write in the morning, I always do so at around the same time upstairs on my computer. Literally, as soon as I open up Roam Research and start typing, my mind turns on like a switch and I'm in writing mode. But of course, there's gonna be times when life gets in the way and you can't do a habit you usually do in a specific phase. Interestingly, moving that particular habit around might be beneficial to you as it can help build context independence. Context independence in regard to habits is the ability to carry out a habit regardless of the context of time or environment you're in. Again, this is something that only gets built in the very strongest of your habits. Brushing your teeth is a good example of a context independent habit. I at least hope you continue to brush your teeth when you go to other places like a hotel during vacation. When your life forces you to switch the timing of your habits, it can be bad in the short term if you're starting to build those repetitions. But in the long term, it will help you build the context independence you'll ideally want in a strong habit. The only thing that matters when building habits is the number of repetitions you carry out of that habit in the long run. In the short term, I could write for 6 hours straight and get an insane amount of work done. If I don't build that habit of writing into my day, however, the 6 hours will quickly become meaningless in the long term. What we're looking for is to attain something in the neuroscience literature called automaticity. Automaticity is the state in which a habit is so ingrained in us that we do it automatically. I don't have to think about getting up and going to the gym in the morning. I just go. This is so powerful because it reduces a phenomenon known as decision fatigue. Unfortunately, we all have a limited willpower reserve that is usually reset by sleep. Decision fatigue is the slow loss in willpower that we experience throughout the day when we make a decision. This can be anything. Small decisions like choosing whether or not to eat some peanut butter from the pantry, deciding which side of the car to get in from, or big decisions like planning out the rest of your week. Once a habit has achieved automaticity, we don't have to make a decision about doing it. It's funny because it's often easier to be 100% certain you will do something than 98% certain. No doubt is way, way better than a little. This leaves us with more willpower to use for other things in our lives, like building more habits. Another name for these automatic habits are Linchpin habits. Linchpin habits are easy to execute because you enjoy them or because they have become automatic, which makes them great for building other habits easier to execute. Try to attach habits that you're trying to build to Linchpin habits to become cues to begin the new habit. A couple of years ago, I wanted to start the habit of weighing myself in the morning. I was a little heavier than I wanted to be and needed something to keep me accountable. The weight scale needed to be somewhere to make it easy to remind me to actually do the habit. I realized that I already had a regular habit of going to the bathroom and brushing my teeth in the morning. Because of this, I used the Linchpin habit of brushing my teeth to help me start weighing myself regularly by placing the weight scale in the bathroom. Of course, there's gonna have to be times when we don't feel like doing a habit. We set everything up perfectly and the right phase of the day, but just don't feel like actually following through. The neuroscience literature shows that there are 2 options we can take if this happens. The first is to utilize procedural memory. Procedural memory is holding in mind the specific sequence of things that need to happen in order for a particular habit to occur. When tasks are stored in our head, they can seem a lot more daunting and hard to act upon. The simple act of running through the exact sequence of what you need to do to enact the habit can make it much more likely to occur. I have a habit of doing a weekly review every single week to analyze what went well in the past week and what I would like to do in the future. If I'm ever feeling unmotivated to do it, I just run through the process in my head. Step 1, brew some chamomile tea. Step 2, turn on the fire in the living room. Step 3, sit down with the tea and laptop next to the fire. Step 4, Open up the weekly review folder template in my browser. Step 5, actually do the weekly review by following the checklist. Interestingly, going through the procedural memory of how you've gone through that habit in the past makes it not only more likely that you'll do it right then, but also in the days and weeks that follow. Another trick you can use is to positively anticipate the onset and offset of that habit session. Think about the good things that will come after and before you do that habit. I use this trick to convince myself to go on a run. I find running hard to get in the mood for. Whenever I feel myself feeling antsy though, I remind myself about the mountain of literature that emphasizes the benefits of exercise on learning. If I get a run in then, it will pay dividends in the future when I sit down to read later that night. So we've talked extensively about building good habits using neuroscience, which leaves the question of how we break bad ones. From the literature I've read, most people's biggest problem comes from engaging in closed-loop behavior. This is when one set of neural firings leads to another. Closed-loop behavior happens when you open up your phone, spot the Instagram or TikTok icon, and spend the next 2 hours scrolling aimlessly through various memes and cat videos. I had this same problem when doing homework back in high school. When I got bored, I would check my Discord messages only to see that one of my friends was playing League of Legends. So I would inevitably ditch the homework assignment and immediately open up the game to join in. To stop this, we need to engage in open loop behavior. Open loop behavior disrupts the typical closed loop behavior cascade by engaging in another habit right after the initial bad one. In my Discord text example, I started to do 25 jumping jacks right after reflexively opening up the app. This brought in a sense of awareness at what was going on and stopped me from falling any further into my bad habit. Be sure to check out my video book summary on daily rituals. It goes over what I've learned from analyzing 100 of the greatest artists' creative habits. As always, have a fantastic day and bye-bye.